I grew up buying fabric from the fabric store, and there are seamstresses everywhere. And so I would just, refabricate what I would see in magazines because the amount of shops there to buy fashion are very minimal. And then when I moved to America for university and then later my career, it was the entire opposite. There was just so much. And I was working at Goldman Sachs at the moment where I realized I couldn't find product that was those day-to-day products that you just feel great on every day and that the quality doesn't go down through time.
And so here we had this dilemma, this fact.
I've been almost a decade researching this subject.
Every aspect of your metabolic health improves.
From the Hint offices in San Francisco, I'm Karla Goldin, founder and CEO of Hint. Welcome to Unstoppable, a podcast which shares successful founder and entrepreneur stories, like Jessica Heron, founder of Stella & Dot, tech maven Randy Zuckerberg, and Lisa Sugar, the creator of the multi-million-dollar media company Pop Sugar. We dive deep into the entrepreneurial mindset, what it takes to create a scalable business, how to make an impact, the intricacies of funding, and much, much more. Plus, we ask the million-dollar question, what does it really take to be unstoppable? Let's find out. Hi, everybody. It's Karla Goldin from Unstoppable. We're so excited to hear from Karla and Shilpa today from Cuyana. Are you guys all familiar with Cuyana? It's like amazing, amazing bags. We're based here in San Francisco with them, but we're going to hear a little bit more about how these guys got started and what is the story and all of the exciting stuff for them going forward too. But first, welcome, you guys. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So how did you two get started? How did you meet? How did you, what is the backstory of the two of you coming together to do this?
So we met back in 2009 when I was in business school, and I had gone to business school to take Cuyana from an idea that was on my business school essay into reality. And I was taking a class on entrepreneurship. And I think once a week, maybe twice a week, prospective students come in and sit in the back of a class. And one of those weeks was the week that Shilpa had come to visit Stanford. And she sat in the back of my class, and then she introduced herself, and I needed her for a project that I was working on separate from Cuyana. And she needed to get into business school. And so we made friends at the end of that class and kept in touch. And we worked on this small project together. And then fast forward a year into Cuyana, kind of, the beginning stages of Cuyana that I was working on, I sought Shilpa out in her business school to see if she wanted to join the Cuyana endeavor and join me.
That's so fun. So go back to this program. So you're at Stanford, and you came to just look at the class. You hadn't applied to school yet.
I was in the process of applying, and so I was just visiting
just
the
to
school.
see what the school looked like. Mm-hmm. And so people actually come in and take on projects in order to show the school. I've never heard of this before.
I know, right? That's not usually happen.
I know. This is awesome.
No, they just come in for a class and leave. But they do introduce themselves, and then sometimes they approach students at the end of the class to ask questions about Stanford and life as a student. And so we just got acquainted that day. And then Shilpa introduced herself as a UX designer, and I needed help from a UX designer for this project that I was doing on this other class.
So
and so, I asked Shilpa if she wanted to help with that. And then Shilpa said later that, one of the reasons why she was really interested in helping me in that project was so that we could get to know each other, and maybe I would write her a recommendation to get into school.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a win-win.
Okay.
But the
now
entire kind of thing was very serendipitous.
So did you end up going to business school then?
I did. I ended up going to Berkeley. Karla was at Stanford.
Oh, not Stanford after all of that. I'm just kidding. But you stayed in touch.
Yeah.
After that. So.
Yeah, for a couple of years after that.
And so you were still incubating this idea. in your head. And
Well, yeah, no, I had established a business. We had a couple of collections that I was selling. We had a website, had customers, early stage revenue. And then it was time to go big and, raise money, and it's time to not do it alone anymore. I did have a couple of interns help me in those early days for free. But no, when it was real that Cuyana was, that I was into something, and it was time to make it big and raise money. Yeah, I kind of pushed the go pedal, and
That's awesome.
sought a co-founder.
And is there meaning behind Cuyana?
Yes,
So
there
what is the meaning?
It means to love. And the whole purpose of our brand is to instill the philosophy of fewer better, which means really own and buy what you love. I know today Mary Kondo has helped us a lot with actually describing that as spark joy.
I love it.
But Cuyana means to love, and it's in Quechua, which is the language of the first makers of our first collection.
So that's so great. And so you stayed in touch, and then at what point, like, how big were you guys when you ended up joining into the team?
I mean, we were pretty small. I mean, the main, very small. We hadn't launched.
So you were
two.
We were two. I think some interns before that, did the summer.
So I doubled the company employee count. But there was already the great thing was that there was a proof of concept. A lot of people along the way ask us what it takes to start a company, and Karla had quickly established product market fit with very little capital investment.
That's
so
awesome.
That was a very big head start to know that what we had was already working.
And so why did you want to do this, Karla? Were you in fashion before, or what sort of made you kind of say, okay, I'm going to go and do this, even in business school? What was sort of the core?
I was a frustrated consumer. I have always loved fashion. And I grew up in a country where I had zero access to fashion, only fashion magazines. And so
where was this?
Ecuador.
Okay.
And so I grew up buying fabric from the fabric store that, there are fabric stores everywhere, and there are seamstresses everywhere. And so I would just, refabricate what I would see in magazines, because the amount of shops there to buy fashion are very minimal. And then, when I moved to America for university and then later my career, it was the entire opposite. There was just so much, but nothing that necessarily filled that gap for me. And I was working at Goldman Sachs at the moment where I realized, there's just, I couldn't find product that was what's labeled now as essentials, or those day-to-day products that you just feel great on every day, and that the quality doesn't go down through time. But more importantly, also, there was very little connection that I saw the consumer having with the products that they were buying, so that they would be more valuable to her, knowing where they're made, or what the material is, or whether it's good quality or bad quality. Even that just subtle distinction of knowing, I bought something that's great quality. I didn't see that even just by shopping with my friends. So there were a lot of very small reasons kind of that all accumulated into this bigger thing, which was, this brand that would kind of solve it all.
And the tagline, fewer better things. We
came up with that much later. It's funny because that wasn't a tagline that was there at the beginning, but that was the intention from the very beginning. And then we a couple of years into the beginning of Cuyana in 2013, when it was time to go to market officially and start really doing marketing campaigns, because we had spent the first 2 years building the supply chain and the product and making that really perfect. We sat down and we were trying to articulate, what is it exactly that we're doing? What's the value proposition of our products that customers can, our elevator pitch really turned into tagline. And it turned out it was fewer better things. And back then, brands weren't really focused on making fewer better things, and that white gap was wide open. We trademarked fewer better. It's ours. And we're the only ones that can use it to sell product. And so it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So take me back to, the first product was
a hat. I know. I was the hat company. So my business school classmates were like, how's the hat business going? And I was like, oh man, it's not a hat business, but it's going great. Thanks for buying that hat, because they all supported me buying hats. But it was just it was the easiest thing to do from a manufacturing standpoint, because from being from Ecuador, that's where Panama hats are made. And I knew who the best makers were, and I could just fly home and, kind of do the whole thing from my dad's house and just, not spend money even in hotels. But it turns out it's a really hard product to sell online. I mean, how many people know their hat size? Yeah. Not many, right?
That's what I was going to say. Right? Yeah.
And one of the premises or the goals at the beginning was to be accessories only, so that we limit return rates and etc. But hats are sized, and so it doesn't really apply to hats. So really plus and minuses, but it worked and it was fine, because at that point, because we weren't, I wasn't really marketing the company online. It was all product market fit, and so most of the sales of that collection were actually done in person. It was all grassroots trunk shows and, fairs and all sorts of things. It was just like,
I remember the trunk shows. So I think in your early days, I went to one of your trunk shows.
Oh, you did? Where?
Really early. It was somewhere here. Yeah, it was somewhere here. In fact, I think it was. It was, and I can't even remember who was holding it. And it was, but anyway, it was interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we had so many people host trunk shows for us. It was so great. We really leaned on, my business school friends, and then when Shilpa joined, all her business school friends, and we did so much grassroots and in-person sales. And so even though it wasn't the best product for online, it was fine because we were mostly selling.
And then I remember having your product when I went to an Every Mother Counts.
Yeah.
And that was here in the city. Yeah. And you guys had done like a small little bag for it. And I remember I was like, oh my God. I remember at that point, like seeing you guys were doing bags, and I hadn't I think it was just hats. I was like, how did I miss that they were doing bags? So what was that transition?
Yeah, it was really that was the ultimate goal, to do leather. And it took time to get there. First straw, because I'm from Ecuador, and then alpaca because it's right next to Ecuador, Peru. Yeah. And I had a really good friend from business school that helped me figure out the best providers of that. And then Argentina was next for leather. And so it was kind of like the third in line. But it was great because
a quick stop in India for...
Oh yeah, we did a quick stop in India. That's true. When Shilpa joined, we did India.
Yeah.
Shilpa's family's from India, so why not, right? But no, with leather, it was really it was one of the target product types. And it ends up being, the majority of our sales, leather goods. And there's a huge, there continues to be, but back then even more, a really large white gap for well-priced, well-made leather goods.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So that's really what pushed our brand forward and to the front line, and that really fueled the velocity of our growth.
And so where's the majority of products now?
Where they're made. So we make them around the world. And now that leather is, the majority of our sales. And so we make leather products in the 3 best countries that we've found in terms of just facilities and leather quality. So all of our leather itself comes from Italy and Argentina.
It's so nice. It's like super soft. So,
yes. And it lasts.
I know nothing about leather other than the fact that I love soft leather. So
and it smells delicious. And when you walk into our stores, you can just smell the leather, right? Yeah. And so that's where the leather itself comes from. And then we manufacture also in Italy. We manufacture the bags in Argentina as well. And we manufacture in Turkey, which turns out to be a country with incredible talent for cut and sew of leather. So we have some productions there as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What are the challenges of doing it overseas and like trying to just take me through some of the challenges of that world?
There was this class at Stanford called, it was funny because we used to laugh at the name, but it's true. It's different countries are different.
Yeah.
So that's how I can describe our supply chain. Every country is different. Every vendor is different. And we really maximize the partnership when we understand each other's cultures. Because, the fact that Cuyana means to love sometimes is like a cheesy thing, but it's true, right? When we find partners that actually love what they're doing and factories that love to make product for the long run because they're proud of it, and we understand how to work together, we make product that's just incredible and beautiful. And, each side takes the ownership that each side needs to take. And it's just a very loyal relationship. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of beauty in making product in different countries. I feel fortunate to be from Ecuador, where I understand a lot of, cultures outside of the US, and I've learned, about other cultures as well.
There are some cultures, though, and we learned along the way that there are certain countries, which, and they're like, our goal with Cuyana is to make, made in any country mean just as much as it does for some other country, right? So, like, why can't made in China, made in India mean the same as made in Italy, right? Like, if you do it well with respect and integrity and quality, they can have the similar kind of ethos and significance. But, when you're working in certain countries, like there are certain corners that certain cultures may cut, or they value different things. That doesn't mean that it's negative about that country. It's just that for our business model, it didn't exactly work.
How has it been being a woman going into these countries and, just basically saying we want to get the stuff done and get it made? Has that been challenging? Or
I always like to say it shouldn't be challenging. It should, just we use it to our advantage. I mean, the types of relationships that we've been able to build with the owners of many of these factories are so strong. Like, our factory in Argentina, I mean, I call him Papa Ruben. Like,
so you had father contacts or like friend of a friend that made introductions.
Yeah, or just through business contacts. And so I think that, there's a lot of goodness that, can come out from that. And I think that, as, if we're smart, we walk in and we have business to do together, and we figure out a way of getting it done. And but I don't think we've had challenges for being one. I mean, some cultures, yes, we're just dealing with men, but that's okay too. That's the same thing as here, previous jobs where maybe I was the only girl sitting in like a math class, for example.
We are always entrepreneurial about everything, right? Yeah. So like if that happens to pose a cultural problem, we figure out a solution for that that's to our advantage. Yeah. Right. So like you just find the right person who can make the intro or, set up the meeting in the right way, and then we'll take it from there. So we just usually view it as an opportunity.
And now that you guys are growing too, I think you're able to go into these places and really show credibility. I mean, I remember when we were starting Hint, I was like literally trying like in secret to figure out who was going to co-pack our product. Yeah. And I would call a bunch of Coke packers and they were like, oh, did you work at Coke or Pepsi before? And I'm like, no. And then they practically hang up the phone on me. And then I found a woman in Chicago who just like believed in me. She thought it was such a crazy idea. And I was paying her some money up front in order to run the first product. But, she said, we'll see how it goes. And she was going to make a little bit of money and maybe she had some line time and that's why she did it. But it's kind of the same industry. I mean, it's mostly men in our industry too. And I mean, now the world like gets easier as you grow and people are able to say, wow, like this is like a real company. But in the beginning, I always tell entrepreneurs that too, that it's just like, I think in every industry, it's not that easy, right? Like to just, get that, like that person to say yes and actually believe in you and do it. But have you guys read Shoe Dog, the film?
I have not yet, but I've been wanting to.
It's been sitting on my desk for like 2 years and I finally read it and it totally like you guys, there's so many. Phil Knight almost, it almost never was like, and there's all these manufacturing stories and him just like getting on a plane and like going into their plants and who did he believe more, and it's just, it's such a great, highly recommend it. Yeah. Like I was just like, oh my God, like Phil Knight new like savior on so many fronts. It's so inspiring, but you guys have done so many things that were hard. Make the product, go and figure out manufacturing in all these different countries. you know, sell online, but you're also selling in stores. And so your stores in San Francisco, that was your flagship.
That's our flagship.
Yeah.
And we own every customer touch point. So I think some of the parts that people don't realize is that we didn't actually even outsource fulfillment. So it's a Cuyana employee that packs and ships every box.
That's awesome.
We own our own distribution center. We own all of our touch points. We don't do any wholesale. So every customer interaction is ours, from customer service emails to the store retail experience to all of our social channels to email to the website. All of it's in-house. To the box experience. So we truly are working to be, you know, a fully omni-channel company, not multi-channel, which a lot of people kind of mix the two, but really giving the customer experience like the best possible treatment. And that's actually what we mean by direct to consumer, because a lot of times direct to consumer can just be, can just signify that they cut out the middleman, right? They just like give you that price markup. But for us, it's really about ensuring that the customer journey with the brand is the best it possibly can be.
Have you been tempted by like the Nordstroms of the world, like coming to you and asking you to do stuff? I bet. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we're always looking into how, you know, as we grow, we are always considering, right? We may not always be the sole distributor. However, you know, if we were to find a way of making it work, we want to make sure that, you know, the customer journey, as Shilpa explained, you know, the very best, then we can control that. So just, you know, how the brand expresses itself to the customer and not, you know, the way that the product is sold to that customer. Because ultimately we're a brand that, you know, we're fewer better. We don't push customers to buy. Like, that's not what our sales team is trained to do. We're actually train our team to teach customers how to buy, and then they should make that decision and walk out feeling great about their purchase, right? And so nuances like that make it very hard for us to fall into that traditional framework of letting go of any of those touch points. And then, you know, there's the data point. We own all of our data. We know everything about our customer. And so if we were to find an arrangement, we need to make sure we are able to get those numbers
and protect those numbers.
And yeah, I would say that those are like the two key things. Now there's a third one, which is margins, which, you know, some position that as the number one kind of unresolved piece for direct to consumer to be able to sell through more traditional wholesale channels. But I think there are ways of making that work. So I wouldn't consider that to be the most challenging piece of that partnership from working. And whether it's a Nordstrom or, you know, Amazon or anybody else, those first 2 points you know, need to be more creatively solved.
It's challenging. I mean, the data side of it, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, because I think it's definitely, I mean, we sell through, you know, stores like Target and Whole Foods, but we also sell through Amazon. And then, I mean, we have 40% of our direct to consumer business is on our site at drinkhint.com. And so for us, it's funny. I actually mentioned this to a banker the other day, and he said, I've never heard Amazon described as a customer acquisition tool by anybody. And I said, like, at the end of the day, Amazon has a selection. They have a buyer, and they pick, you know, they pick a subset of our drinks, and they put them on, or our sunscreen or whatever, and they put it on the site. And then the consumer like goes and buys there because it's convenient, the price is right, whatever it is, but we can't control like the price. I mean, we don't get the data back, but there's a lot of these consumers that come to our site because there's a bigger selection. They feel like, even though this isn't true, they feel like they get the newest batches, right, that are there. And then also the subscription side of the business, I think is something else where Amazon, you know, their subscription is just one way and ours is very like customizable. So I could totally see you guys going in that direction, but the reality is like it really boils down to the data and sort of how much do you care about that as you grow. But I think there's a lot of avenues that we are in now where, like, I mean, people always say to me, should I buy it on Target or should I buy it on your website? And I'm like you are the customer and you control that journey. Like, I'm like, go do whatever you want to do.
Right.
Right. And in the end, as our sales grow offline, they grow online.
Yeah.
And vice versa. It just keeps like going like that at some point. So anyway, it's an interesting sort of challenge, I think. The what's the best thing to do ultimately along the way.
Yeah. And I mean, for us, like Karla said, the distribution mix really just depends on what gives the customers the things that they want.
Yeah.
Right?
And even walking into your stores, right? Like, I mean, there's going to be people that are going to walk into your store and not purchase, but then they're going to go online because they're going to be, that's me. Like, then I'll be thinking about something and then I'll be like, then I'll go online and then I'll go and buy it, or I've had it before and I want to give it as a gift or buy it again. So I think that's the interesting side of this as well. So how many years have you guys been?
So 2011 is when Cuyana started, and Shilpa joined in 2012.
Actually, our 8th birthday.
Yeah, Cuyana's 8th birthday was
happy
this
birthday
weekend.
On Sunday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so you have stores in New York and 2 in Los Angeles?
2 in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
We have 1 in Pacific Palaces and then 1 in Venice Beach.
Do customers vary by San Francisco versus LA? Like there's rivalry that goes on between the North and the South.
Definitely
like,
is very...
Who's cooler? Who has better fashion?
No, I don't know about that question, but they're definitely... I mean, the main difference is that our San Francisco store is a second floor experience. So like, you actually are, you're coming to Cuyana when you come into the building, right? You're like seeking us out. So it's a different customer mix that we see in San Francisco that way. So like, a higher repeat customer versus Abbot Kinney and Palisades is more like, it's more diverse in that perspective, like a lot more walk-in traffic, people who are not aware of us. So it's just a very different customer profile. Every market's very different.
That's awesome. Very, very cool.
I will not answer who has better fashion, but... They're all very, very...
Or New York. We'll just say New York has better fashion altogether, right? So, just kidding. So, are you guys selling internationally now, or
not yet?
No.
I mean, if you are an international customer, you can order and we will ship it to you. But we are not set up yet to do that in a competitive way. But we will. But not yet.
Not quite yet. So we're in the same boat, exactly the same boat. So for people who are listening, I mean, what do you think is sort of the biggest challenge? I mean, again, like going back to some of the challenges that I think you guys had, everything from, finding manufacturers to actually figuring out the selection to, you talked about, you just closed your Series C, and you and I chatted a little bit about, like, I'm very honest about raising money, that it's like the worst thing that I think it's probably the worst thing that entrepreneurs like do.
It's a challenging process.
I think it's personally, I think that it's just like not so much fun, but what do you think is like the key thing that people should be aware of when they're raising money? Like you guys have gotten to your C raise, like, what do you think is like the big thing?
To be aware of the amount of time it takes.
Yeah.
So our Series C was a little different because we weren't officially on the road raising. So I don't know what it's like to raise a Series C, but in the previous rounds, at least in our seed, it just takes a long time. And I think that the amount of distraction it creates into the business until you go through it, you don't understand it, even though people will tell you. It's like, it feels like it's like presentations and you're just meeting with people. No, you're doing a lot of work in between and just getting, it's just a lot of work. And I think that there needs to be a lot of planning done before fundraising so that the business can continue on, the path it needs to go to while the fundraising exercise happens. And when you have a bigger team, that's easier, right? But when you're usually doing your seed round, there'll be kind of a dip in the performance while you're out raising.
It's a full-time job while you have another full-time job, which is like, I don't think people realize how much time that takes. And so the whole time you're like raising money, you want to get back to work. You are working. So it's like,
what do you think were the key points where they, like, what people were asking you about? I mean, was it like team? Was it growth? Was it like, what were like
I think at different stages, the questions are different. But for, our seed round was really product market fit and team. Those two are the key things.
And what is the team going to bring to this problem space? Like, how are you going to solve it differently? Which is very, like, you don't have like the examples necessarily as many at your fingertips as you do later in your business. So you have to use what you have that you've gotten as scrappily as possible. And then you have to really lean on just the caliber of the people.
Did you feel like your existing, I mean, you were at sea, did you feel like your existing investors like also helped? Like, do people look at sort of like, oh, who else is like invested in this too? I feel like that was something for me that people really, you know, looked at like, oh, that person is invested. And like, that must be like, that gets credibility. I think as you grow your cap table, I think that kind of stuff really makes sense. So I always tell entrepreneurs too, like, you know, it's one thing to get money in the door, but I do really believe that like the people, like they sort of speak to it. I mean, we have like 70% of our cap table is women too. Yeah. So people are always like, whoa, like, you know, you guys have a lot of women who have invested in the company. And so anyway, I'm always like, you know, telling people that it's like, it's one thing to get the check, but I think if it's also, if you can think like, is this somebody that's actually, you know, going to be on paper look great, but also maybe can also make some introductions too along the way. I think that's such an important piece of it.
For sure. It's both.
As well.
It goes both ways. And it's hard when you're asking for money to think about that part because you're just hoping somebody will, you know, invest in your idea, but it really is a partnership. So you have to be cognizant of who you're partnering with too, and make sure you're taking money from the right person.
Yeah, totally.
For many reasons. Beyond just connections too, just to make sure that your working styles are similar, that you're really adding value both ways.
That's awesome. And I feel like you guys have just followed a passion, right? To go and create something too. I mean, I speak a lot on college campuses and I'm always telling people like, I think that if you can actually go do a job eventually, maybe not right away, that you really, really like are passionate about, that you believe in it. And you know, maybe you like to wear it, maybe you like to drink it, whatever. Like, I think it just makes life so much easier, you know, that you can actually wake up and love that. What would you guys say to that, to entrepreneurs or would be entrepreneurs that are thinking about creating something?
To whether to do, you know, to follow a passion or not. Yeah. I mean, it's so important to be passionate about what you do because it's, you know, it's hard most of the time. It's not an easy thing. Yeah. And if you're on top of that, if you're not passionate about what you're building, I can't imagine doing this. Like, right. Frankly. Yeah. I mean, there wouldn't really be a reason, hard. Right? Yeah. It's not easy.
You know, I always say there's a lot easier ways to make money. So if you're not really that passionate about sort of what you're doing too, I think like that's really, really important. So that's awesome. And also finding people that you like to work with. It's obvious, like watching you two interact with each other, that's such an important piece of it.
Yeah,
as well.
Super important. And the first employees matter. I mean, you know, those are the people that will build the DNA of the company, right?
Totally.
And so, all of that really matters. I mean, you spend most of the time together.
Is most of your team here in San Francisco?
Yeah, most of them are here. Now with retail stores, we have people spread in different cities, but most of the team is here.
So what's next for you guys? The next
exciting
big thing.
Stuff.
Now you guys have plenty of money in the bank.
Yes. Well, you know, it's so funny, but the answer really is just doing more of what we've done, doing more and more and more and better. And
that's awesome.
We're not necessarily, you know, we're not going to be changing anything. It's really about just doubling down on what we've done from, you know, a product standpoint, a team standpoint, you know, a technology standpoint, so that we can keep growing the essence of what we've built and touch more women around the world.
That's awesome. That's really, really great. So what makes you guys unstoppable? I always ask this question, but it's you've already highlighted a few things, but I'd love to hear from both of you guys.
What makes us unstoppable? I guess I'll answer first since I just repeated the question. For me, I like to say, you know, this is one of the values of our company, but I'm just so grateful of the opportunities that I've had in life. I come from a country where most people live under the poverty line, and I had the opportunity to leave and get an education in an Ivy League school, and now I'm building a business. That's awesome. So for me, you know, the more I do, the more I feel I owe even more to the world. And it's just, you know, it's a sense of kind of gratefulness that makes me unstoppable.
That's so great. So do you go back often?
I try to, but now I have a son, so that makes it harder. And also, my first kid was Cuyana, and so even with Cuyana, I think I went when we were making the hats, and after that, it just once a year at most for Christmas. We are very close with my family and my father in particular, who still lives there.
They must be so proud.
Well, finally, he realizes it's a real business. He was really upset when I left Goldman. He could not believe I did that.
He saw his daughter selling hats, basically. As he used to see vendors on the side of the road in Ecuador. So he was a little concerned about that, rightfully so.
And I never knew, he never told me, of course, because he's the most supportive father ever. But my sister would be like, my dad is really, really upset. He doesn't know why you're doing this. Why are you selling hats on the street? And I'm like, oh my God.
So funny.
There's a bigger vision.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I think all dads are like that when, entrepreneurs go on their journey, right? Mm-hmm. It's just, and moms too. I mean, I think look, I was a tech executive and then I had this big idea to start a beverage company. And, my dad had been in the food business actually for years. He had started a product inside of a large company called Healthy Choice, which was inside of ConAgra. But, he was like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're living in Silicon Valley. I'm sure you can find a job somewhere in tech. And I was like, this is just what I want to do. And I want to solve this problem around, sugar and sweeteners. And he was like, okay, that's great, but you could make a lot more money doing these other things. And then
what does he say now?
So, well, he passed away a few years ago, but he was alive when we were, getting going and getting started. And, I think for him, what he realized that, he never really, as he said, didn't have the courage to actually go and live this way. And it's sort of a whole other point that I tell entrepreneurs too. It's it's really easy for me to say. I mean, at the time I, had some money that I had saved up, so we were able to finance the first few years. And I had 3 kids at the time when I started the company. Actually ended up having 4 right when we were launching. But, looking at my dad with 5 kids and him saying, I want to go and start a company, he felt like that was irresponsible to actually go start a company when he had to feed us and send us to school and do all of these things. And so I think for him, I gained an appreciation. Look, it was really, I was always why were you so chicken? Why didn't you go start a company? And so it was a journey that we both kind of went through because, it's real. People are like, oh, I want to start this company, but I have, a family and I've only got 1 paycheck coming in or whatever. I'm like, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
definitely not.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not, too risky. It'll still be there. Your idea. But I think, in the case of my dad too, working for a large company, when in, the food and beverage space, and I would guess in fashion, it's sort of the same thing, but there's slotting fees for, these big placements inside of stores. And so my dad, when I went to him and I said, okay, how do I get it on the shelf at Safeway? He was like, I have no idea, because ConAgra did the deal with Safeway. And then they said, okay, we're going to put these products on the shelf. So he was like, I have no idea how that's done. I mean, we deal with the buyer, but it's already slotted. We don't actually sell it in there. And so we sell it internally. Who's going to get those slots? And which is, again, anyone who's kind of worked in, large companies would probably, I would guess, it's sort of the same situation. So anyway, it was an interesting kind of realization, but he also, I think, thought, if I would have decided to do it earlier in life, before I had kids, this is the kind of stuff that I would have done. And he thought, again, I think all entrepreneurs that I meet, especially the ones that are able to scale their business, have to be really comfortable with living with 1 foot off a cliff. Yeah. And, and the earlier you do it in life, the better, when you don't have a family and you're not,
totally.
Right?
And times are different too. I feel like starting a company is kind of contagious. We have the fortunate aspect of living in a city where so many people want to start companies or have started companies that it just kind of fuels the fire. For me, going to business school was kind of like 2 years of like a retreat to make it happen kind of thing, and kind of, because you have to have a lot of courage to do it. And I think our parents lived in a very different time for them to be able to do that, right?
Well, you touched on two things. I mean, I think it is more common, but I think especially in the Bay Area, like I always say,
even more,
like
exactly.
failure. And like the number of people who I interviewed, who are previous entrepreneurs and they've decided to sort of like go in and support a company versus actually like founding another company. But they can articulate the fact that, their company failed or they got fired or whatever it is. I mean, that would be something in my dad's generation that you would never tell anybody.
Yeah.
Like that is like something that is so much more common today. And I think people are, much more understanding, and like, I think it's much more credible if people can actually own that kind of stuff too. I think it's important. But I also think we're spoiled in the Bay Area that I still don't think that there's certain parts of the country that, you're going to walk around and say, oh, I lost my job or this company failed or whatever. There's
the
still
unique
this
environment.
There's still this shame that goes with that. I think that shouldn't be there because we're all just learning on this journey. And I think it's super important. So, but yeah, that was the crazy story. So how about you? So Unstoppable. So
I think one of the things that makes Karla and I such good partners is that we share a lot of the same values, right? So I also have an incredible appreciation for this moment in time. And, my grandfather, he used to beg for 2 rupees a month so he could go to school, right? And so like only 2 generations later, like I have an opportunity to maximize what I contribute, right? Like to see and push my limits, to see to my capacity, right? And so I think that ability wasn't lost on me to try it, to really like see what we were all capable of. So, and I think when you approach it that way and you're maximizing for fulfillment, then you can do a lot of really amazing things.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, not only for him to be watching, but your son, and you have a son, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's so great. I mean, it's a whole new generation that you guys are starting above and beyond the product of just being able to go out and disrupt a business. It's super cool. So where do people find Cuyana? Where's
online.
Online.
The best.
Cuyana.com. Or we have 5 stores running now. San Francisco, Stanford, Pacific Palisades, Venice Beach, Nabokini, and then in Nolita, New York on Prince Street.
That's awesome. So if somebody were to tweet something out about Cuyana, what would you want them to say about the company or you guys?
It's the best price per wear in any category, that it really is made with integrity, and that it lives up to the value of fewer better things.
I love it. It's great. Super great. Well, thanks to both of you guys for coming and tell us anytime how we can support you guys. And thanks for coming.
Thanks so much.
It.
Thank you.
If you like what you heard, please help spread the word and leave us a review. You can also follow along with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Kara Goldin. Do you have a question for me or want to nominate an innovator to spotlight? Please talk to me at Kara Goldin on Twitter. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, be unstoppable.